Hi, my name is Nathan Yang, and the title of my project is The Single Stigma, investigating the perceptions of single parents based on gender and way to become single. I first became interested in pursuing research on single parents when talking to my grandmother. My grandmother herself was actually a single mother who raised my father and his two older siblings. After listening to her stories of discrimination, I wanted to learn more about this injustice and learn more about a marginalized group in society. So when initially researching single parents, I found that they're actually one of the largest growing groups in America today. In a study conducted by Pew Social in 2014, since 1960, the number of families headed by a single parent have more than tripled. Households headed by a single mother account for approximately 25% of all households, while households headed by a single father account for an additional 6%. Additionally, single parents become a considerable part of the workforce as they account for approximately 23% of all employees. However, despite the conclusive evidence that suggests that they're becoming more integrated in society, researchers have still documented many negative societal attitudes toward them. So I sought to expand upon previous research, and the problem of my study is how does the gender and way of becoming a single parent affect perceptions of single parents' parental competence, workplace competence, and overall being of their child. So in my literature, I found that not surprisingly, married parents are perceived more positively than never married parents or single parents in terms of workplace competence and parental competence. In a study conducted by Bennett and Jameson in 1999, married parents were perceived as being better caregivers than never married parents and divorced parents, and were associated with more positive parenting traits, such as warmth and trustworthiness. Next, single parents also face discrimination in the workplace, as in this study conducted by Carl and Sutton in 1998, participants who rated applications found that single parents were perceived less suitable overall for employment than married parents and never married parents. Next, I also investigated the differences in perceptions of a single father and a single mother, and found that in the study conducted by Hannah McJordan in 2012, undergraduates who rated parents based on a sample vignette of a single mother and single father reported that the single mother had a higher perceived parental competence than the single father, and this was due to an implicit belief that women are caregivers by nature. Conversely, single fathers are perceived more positively in terms of workplace competence, as in the study done by Fuegen in 2004, undergraduates rated women more harshly than fathers in applicant attributes such as competence and work ethic. And finally, in this longitudinal study done by Motto in 2000, children in single-parent families are found to be at greater risk of emotional and behavioral problems than children from traditional two-parent households with a mother and father. So, while many of these studies have looked at attitudes towards single parents, few have really explored whether there are differences in perceptions of people who elect single parenthood by rejecting the institution of marriage and those who become single due to life circumstances such as divorce. So in my study, I investigated the different perceptions of these parents based on their sex and way of becoming single. So after compiling my literature review, I created 3 separate hypotheses. First, I hypothesized that compared to a divorced or single parent by choice, a married parent will have a higher perceived parental competence, higher perceived workplace competence, and a higher perceived overall well-being of their child. Next, I hypothesized that compared to a single parent by choice, a divorced single parent will have a higher perceived parental competence, higher perceived workplace competence, and higher perceived overall well-being of the child. And finally, I hypothesized that compared to a female parent, a male parent will have a lower perceived parental competence, higher perceived workplace competence, and lower perceived overall well-being of the child. So, for my method, I collected my sample through the online crowdsourcing website, Amazon Mechanical Turk. Amazon Mechanical Turk. These participants were required to be over the age of 18 and a citizen of the United States. I determined I needed approximately 480 participants, as suggested by a power analysis, and upon completion of my study, I paid each participant a monetary incentive of 25 cents. Shown here on the figures on the right are my demographics. 56% of my participants were male, while 44% were female, and the majority of my participants were Caucasian, followed by Asian American. So after being recruited from Amazon Mechanical Turk, participants were then redirected to my survey on SurveyMonkey, and were randomly assigned to 1 to 6 conditions or scenarios that depicted a working parent. So, in my scenarios, I initially struggled with what information to actually present. I didn't want to give away too much information that will create biases against these parents, but I still wanted to create a realistic parent in the United States who is struggling to balance between the roles of breadwinner and caregiver. So I emailed 3 separate psychologists, one being Dr. Triolo of West Virginia University, and used their expertise to refine my experimental stimulus. So in my scenarios, I manipulated the independent variable gender by using different names Brad Anderson for male and Meredith Roberts for female, and I manipulated marital status or becoming single through discerning statements, such as Brad Anderson or Meredith Roberts met Michael's mother or father and has been married to him for her for 8 years for married parents, and has been divorced from him/her for 8 years for a divorced parent. As stated before, I also included background information that will allow participants to formulate opinions about this parent that they're reading about, and this included now Brad Meredith works for a mid-sized accounting firm, earns a salary about $60,000 a year, etc. I also included information about Michael's well-being, the child, which included Brad Meredith helps Michael with his homework and issues. Sometimes he throws temper tantrums. So, after reading my scenario, participants were then shown a 10-item survey, which included 4 questions based on perceived parental competence, 3 questions based on perceived workplace competence, and 3 questions based on overall being of the child. Each scale had a high internal reliability, as indicated by a high Chromex alpha score. So moving on to my results, in order to analyze my data, I ran 3 Bit3 ANOVAs that found the impact of target gender, participant's gender, and marital status on perceived parental competence, perceived workplace competence, and perceived overall being of the child. So first, a 3 ANOVA reveals a significant main effect of target gender on the perceived parental competence of the parent. As indicated on the figure on the right, the male parent were perceived more positively in terms of parental competence than the female parent. So, contrary to my hypothesis, male parents were actually perceived more positively than female parents. This is surprising, as previous research has always suggested that female parents were always seen as a better caregiver of the 2 types of parents. So these findings may be attributed to the methodology of my study, which used a vignette as opposed to those that previously investigated the perceptions of single parents by asking participants to list descriptors and beliefs about a certain person. So in the present study, which used the vignette, Alright, so in the present study, which used the vignette, participants only read one scenario, and in all cases, the parent was always depicted as a career-driven worker who strives for an equilibrium between the breadwinning and caregiving responsibilities. So, when people are given very basic information about someone, such as this person is a single father, he or she may rely heavily on their stereotypes, and thus will create the negative perceptions about a single mother. However, in my case, where the single father was described as playing a prominent role in his child's life, participants may have perceived him to be an especially good parent. Next, a 3 ANOVA revealed a significant interaction between target gender and participant gender on perceived workplace competence. As indicated on the figure on the right, the female participant rated the male parent as being having a significantly higher perceived workplace competence than the female parents, while the male participants reported no differences in the rating between the 2. So this is also surprising, as media has really covered the fact that there's a gender bias in the workplace. However, my results indicate that females are actually perpetuating the stereotype that men are more competent workers despite an equal level of competence. So after doing some research, I came across a study conducted by the Stanford Research Institution, which found that female parents believe that they are more responsible for the caregiving responsibilities in the household, while male parents believe that they share the responsibilities amongst the 2 parents equally. So in this case, the female participants may have perceived the female parent to be less competent in terms of workplace competence due to the fact that that so much time is allocated to the child, and thus they do not have the time to be a standard employee. On the other hand, because the male parent does not have to involve himself in the caregiving responsibilities, at most times he is able to focus more of his attention on the breadwinning responsibilities and thus can be a standard employee. Male participants, on the other hand, report no differences in the 2, which is reasonable, as they believe that they share the caregiving and breadwinning responsibilities equally. And finally, a 3 ANOVA revealed a significant main effect of marital status on perceived overall being of the child. 2 Kramer postdoc tests revealed that the child of the divorced household has significantly lower perceived overall being than the child of the married household. So this suggests that there's still a negative connotation pertaining to divorce when it comes to the overall being of the child. And also interesting, contrary to my hypothesis, gender played no significant role on the perceived overall being of the child, which suggests that participants, when disregarding gender, are focusing more on the situational factors of the parent, more specifically how they're able to cope with their responsibilities as a parent and the hardships of having so many responsibilities, and thus do not focus on their gender. So in my study, I came across some limitations. Most notably, my results differ drastically from previous studies. As men were generally perceived more positively than women in my vignette. So this shows the need to replicate my study in order to ensure that these results are not idiosyncratic to my study only. Some possible further studies is that only a male child was used in my sample vignette, so how would these results differ if I use a female child? And next, only single parents were compared to married parents in my study. So how would different types of parents, such as widowed or gay parents, be perceived in similar parenting situations? So my study has far-reaching implications in today's world. Here, my findings suggest suggesting the increasingly progressive society, as indicated by the small effect sizes of my results, which show that while biases against women and single parents still exist, they're growing weaker. And next, men were perceived very positively in my study, which shows that gender bias against men may be deteriorating at a quicker rate than women. Thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, please